Welcome to another episode of Another Man's Shoes. I'm delighted to have on Darren Hardy tonight. I met him a few weeks back when we were in London. We were with some friends and we sort of bumped into him. Ended up coming to dinner with us, and one of the guys just told us about one of the events that he'd just carried out, and I couldn't quite believe it. So sort of dug into it a bit more, and he told us a bit about what he was about. And so he's an ex-soldier, former officer in the British Army. Then he left, and he's been on events all over the world, just smashing records. And he's an absolute machine. And what you're going to hear in the next hour is a fantastic journey. And Darren, we are delighted to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, what we'll do, we'll start with the sort of usual fashion. We'll talk about the exciting stuff in a minute, but tell us about your sort of childhood, where you came from, and has that sort of had any impact on what you've done sort of in your adult life, or what took you on your journey? Where did it start?
So it started in Park Hall, which is an estate in Northern Ireland, in Antrim, just slightly above Belfast. If anyone's been serving Royal Engineer wise over there, it's 2-5 Engineer Regiment, and that's where I grew up, just me and my mum, until she eventually met my dad, who adopted me. And I grew up in quite a rough paramilitary area, if you want to call it. Seeing the usual punishment beatings would be a normal thing. Witnessing a few shootings, some of them kneecaps blown out at age 8, and then the house opposite getting shot through, which missed the girl in school a year below me. And these were just a general sort of occurrence, and to me it's completely normalised. So I don't think much of it, and if anyone from back home is listening, they'll think it's normal. But when I talk to someone over in the mainland, it doesn't seem very normal.
No, I think if you ask anyone about if they're seeing people getting kneecap shot out at 8 years old and firearms and beatings, that's quite far from normal. That's the sort of thing you'd see on telly, not out your front window. No,
and you're absolutely right. And around the 11th, 12th of July period, where all the sort of bonfires and parades take place, and people parading around with weapon systems and firing them up into the air, so you've seen the police and the military having them. And I never thought anything of it. And actually growing up and becoming an adult, would I want my kids growing up in that? Probably not, really, is the answer, So, and realizing things like being out in Iraq, for example, and then firing shots up in the air is actually a pretty full on thing, that Rhine has to come down somewhere.
Certainly does. Yeah. I suppose not many conservatories and greenhouses in Northern Ireland.
No.
So you're growing up. So you're in Northern Ireland. There's obviously a lot of differences with religion out there. There's obviously the sectarian divide, and I suppose you either sort of sit there and you get on with the police and with the army, or you decide to go sort of the other way, and I suppose, and you get yourself into trouble. But so it's growing up through school. Did you sort of get drawn to one side or another? Did you find yourself maybe going towards the dark side and getting involved in things you shouldn't have?
Yeah, because that was what everyone did. It was the whole bunking off school, or going to the next riot, or following the crowds, and especially, as you said, the divide of Protestant and Catholic, and me coming from a very Protestant paramilitary sort of background state. It was all pretty much. I remember, for example, Martin McGuinness becoming head of education, and obviously a Catholic, and having relationships with the IRA. When he came around to visit the schools, my whole school protested massively. We were throwing bricks and bottles at the school next door because it was a grammar school, and they weren't out protesting. And the headmaster out of his loud hailer trying to clear us, and it took, actually, I remember the physical training instructor, the PE teacher, from running out with a baseball bat and chasing us all back into the classroom. So it was quite funny. But at that early age, and people from my class went straight into prison. Things with the other crowd. I remember one incident was another kid. I say kid because it was 16-year-old, 15, getting an axe in the back of the head, and a couple of guys in my school went down for it.
Wow, I mean, that is not the sort of stuff you expect to hear or see ever.
Yeah,
I think we're quite sheltered these days, and if our children we even saw that once, they'd be traumatised. And to have that on an almost daily basis, it must be something to behold. And so I suppose your character must have started to come through at that age, and you sort of started making decisions about where you wanted to sort of take your career then.
Absolutely. I mean, so as I mentioned, my mum met this guy who ended up adopting me. They got married and he adopted me when I was 12, and he was in the military in the Royal Engineers. And he was based at the end. Obviously, my mum picked him up in the local nightclub, and then it just happened to be. And it was great. You know, I didn't have a father up until that point, so it was great for him to come along and sort of show me the way. And pretty much from there, I sort of knew I wanted to join the army. Because he was in the army, and we seen the military on the streets back then, so it's a pretty cool thing.
Yep.
And I was more focused towards sport and playing rugby and athletics and stuff rather than as I was getting older, rather than going and getting pissed at the weekend and causing fights when I started when I was 14, and that was really hurting hit sport a lot harder. And that's where I thought I wanted to make a difference and definitely join the military.
Okay, and so then you sort of joined the military. What age was that?
So I was just turned 17, so I applied when I was 16, the youngest age you could. But being in Northern Ireland, they've got a lot more security checks to be done in your family and background, and the process takes a little bit longer. So it's probably just 9 months older.
Yeah, completely.
17.
And, I mean, how did that go down when you sort of go down the pub or the local youth club, tell your friends, hey, I'm off to join the British Army? I imagine you had to be quite careful about who you spoke to about that.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, so I came from a Protestant background, everything was sort of, that was British. It was fine, you're British, I think if someone from an opposite religion, i.e. Catholic, got wind of that, then that probably would be a bit different. But I did obviously keep it under sort of on the QT. And even when I went away and joined and came back, I went from drinking in a local pub with my fake ID, of course, to coming back with an actual ID and a driving license, to saying that I just worked away over in England as a physical training instructor.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think they knew, And
you get to go back to Ireland now? Do you go back? You got family there, friends you still go back and see?
Not really, to be honest. So unfortunately in 2015, my mum passed away, and it was I never really went back much before that. So my dad's still there. Him and my mum broke up maybe 8-9 years ago. So, and then he's remarried. So I do go back and see him. I've got a brother who lives in, I don't know, he lives in Denmark, I think, or Sweden, one of those ones at the top, who's a lot younger. And then my little sister, who's like, I think she's 21, maybe or 20 or something along those lines. But again, I don't really see, she would come over here more often. She was 14 when my mum died. So, so she's 19 actually. So yeah, so she would come over here more often. And maybe see my granda, who is my dad, my mum's dad. My mum's mum, my nana, passed away as well when I was in training to go to Iraq in 2006. It was a shit time, but yeah, so not much. And my uncle. So there's not many people there. I tend to go back for funerals or weddings now. Settled now. I've got my own family here, so not really a big reason to go back.
Okay, so. Yeah, maybe there'll be an event there because there's lots of hills and cold places for you to get yourself right into, and it's nice and wet, and it seems that's the sort of thing you like. So maybe you'll find some sort of equally hard challenge over there and going up and down a mountain 100 times.
We'll see. Yeah, but yes, definitely wet is definitely the true one there.
Absolutely. So you're 17, you've left home, you're in the big wide open world, even though you've been exposed to it by the sounds of it for like the 17 years before that. So you come over. You've joined the military. You decided on the engineers, as you said, because of your sort of your dad's sort of past. So sort of explain to people that sort of listening, they may not understand. So what's it involve as a 17-year-old? You come over here, you've decided to join the engineers. What do you have to do? What sort of training? What is your job role? Where do you see yourself going?
Yeah, so you join as a soldier, sort of first, your infantry skills. So I went to Litchfield for a 12-week basic training course, and it was literally gated for 12 weeks and becoming a squatty in essence, running around a field looking like a tree, and I knew that was only part time before going on to actually near where I live now in Hampshire, Surrey, where they are with the Royal Engineer training. So a 12-week course, being a soldier, learning weapon systems, and it was pretty hardcore in a way. It was 2003. There was we still got taken around the back of the building and punched or hit if we messed up, and not allowed so much now, but it made me into the bloke I am today, and funny, I was just texting a couple of guys. We've got a group from training. We're saying, "Oh, do you remember that time we got punched in the face?" And, and how would that happen now? And so that was the sort of the first stage, and then came to Gibraltar Barracks to 3 RSME to learn how to be a Royal Engineer, and that was the meat of what I wanted to do. It was your explosives, your sort of all your watermanship, your mine clearance, all the things that that makes the army move, fight, survive type thing, as we say. And always a lot of banter and the intercore, but they are probably the best.
Oh, well, yeah. We can debate that long and hard. I mean, I had a couple of mates that were in the engineers, and when we used to sort of come back on leave, we had paras, we had us, and scalies and engineers. And one of the things that they said, "What have you done this week?" "Oh, I've been jumping out of planes." I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm jealous. Yeah, I want to be jumping out of planes." And what have you been doing this week? "Oh, we built a bridge." "Oh, what'd you do then?" "Oh, we blew it up." I was like, "What?" "Okay." So what have you done this week?" "Oh, well, I climbed a tree and put an antenna up there." It's like nothing fun, move on. And I think the engineers definitely had the best jobs. When we were on different ops, I thought it was great because you get to play with the big toys, but when it got cold, you had a nice vehicle to get yourself into and turn the heater on. So,
exactly, and that's it. And funny, actually, phase 1 training was a mixture. Lichfield, I think, just left to be, there was a para depot, and then it was Royal Engineers and Signals. So I had a couple of mates. I think it was about maybe 6 out of the 30 in basic training that went Signals. So And so you finish basic training, then you sort of get deployed. So you're a sapper, a young sapper now, sort of equivalent to a private. Where did you go? What did you do? So I went to Germany. So it was again there. So as a Royal Engineer, you're still not fully traded yet. You've still got your sort of phase 3 to go. And I went to Germany quickly for soldier under training, soldier something, or soldier awaiting training, I think it might have been. And then came back to Chatham, which was 1 RSME, to do my trade course, and that was a plant operator mechanic, as it was known then. Not really much mechanicking, but more just driving the big, as you said, the big toys. Stuff when you were cold. You put the heating on when you're in minus in Poland, or vice versa. When it was hot, you have the aircon on, and the odd digging a trench for the infantry lot, and getting a few crates of beer at the end of the exercise. So that was a course that I did, and then went back to Germany. And spent the next 4 years there with numerous courses and deployments throughout.
Yeah, because I remember from Germany, it was you kind of fell into 2 camps. You either went out all weekend on the lash, went to various clubs with or without women in clothes, or you just basically trained. You didn't drink, and you just got super fit, and you were up in Bavaria, the Black Mountains, and doing all the regimental competitions. And so I'm assuming you sort of went down the latter, and you went down for the physical sort of life.
I didn't really. I'm one of these blessed people that can do the first life but stay fit, and everyone hates one of those guys.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, so it's only now, being 35, that it's catching up on me, to be honest.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it.
Yeah. So I was that guy that was trying to maybe only not going out one night of the week because nowhere was open. I remember like Tuesday night was karaoke in the Old Triangle. Yeah. Wednesday, Thursday night was in the local university. And then hitting the weekend was just how it used to be.
Fantastic. It's living though, isn't it? I think that's the great thing about it. It's so much life experience that you're getting.
100%, and 17 years old, being based in Central Europe with, we used to jump the trains and go up to Hamburg or whatever, down, as you say, even just down to Bavaria, do some fun stuff and then go out in the lash. And I think soldiers nowadays miss out on the Germany postings, because you can't go home at weekends. We were living in 4-man rooms back then. It was, it was the army, you ate together, you slept together, you fought together, and it was all that bond, something that a lot of people probably won't understand now in today's army.
No, I think if you haven't been to a block party, you've missed out.
Yeah.
They were something else. Go and get yourself a crate of 5 Deutschmark Herfurter pills and get on it for the weekend.
Until you get banned from drinking in the camp because you've messed up that much. And it was exactly it. I remember one time we got one of the lads got filled in by the Remy that was on camp, and he at this point he'd got out of the army, and we were in the squadron bar, and which was in the block, and it was just right, let's go and fill the Remy in. So we flooded their block and just went nuts, and we got put on ASBO weekends. where our seniors had to take us away and do something productive. But thankfully, I had a good core man in the gym, and he took the gym staff to the Oktoberfest, so it was quite good.
Oh, yeah. Remember that, the Raz Festival and all that. So you say you're not drinking, you're doing your phys. You became a PTI. Was that your sort of first sort of foray into sort of pushing yourself to the next level of endurance?
No, so I did P Company, but which would have been then was 9 Squadron involved into 5-1. I came off the first time with a broken leg and then went back and finished, and but never ever served with 9 Squadron. It was just a course, never jumped out of a plane apart from my own skydiving. But it was never really a thing I wanted to go and do. It was my mate was in the bar asking, does anyone want to come on this course? I'm like, yeah, what is it? And yeah. And then from that there we deployed to Iraq for quite a good tour actually, which then some things that link into sort of where I was diagnosed with PTSD then, and then became a PTI after that, and that's where I fully focused and stayed a lot of it. I was one of these guys who just didn't leave the gym. It was I was, instead of doing a 6-month post in the gym, I did like 3 years, 2 years in it, and never wanted to leave. You couldn't get me out, and it was like, yeah, I'm going to go PT course, so I've got to stay in the gym with no intentions to go PT course.
Yeah,
it did cross my mind, but I mean, later decisions made on from that. And I left Germany from working in the gym as a PTI. To post to Northern Ireland, the 2-5 Engineer Regiment, back to my hometown in Antrim, and that's what I mentioned at the start. Where more shit happened, I suppose, is when those two, Patrick and Mark, two slackers, got shot there. So
that you were on, was it Optelic 2 or 3 or something back in, was it 2006? Was that for Iraq? 2008. Yeah. So that was right in the middle. I mean, that was hairy times there. You up in Basra, sort of daily sort of routine of getting bombed and going out, sort of and just being in the shit. I mean, everyone I spoke to who was there at that time, it was much more difficult than when we were there. I think they've really got their act together, the locals.
I think so, and I remember one of the mega threats then was VIEDs, so vehicle-borne IEDs, and they were just coming into fashion, if you want to call it, and that made your nerves up. So any vehicle was approaching close, and I mean, I was part of a multiple. We didn't spend much time with the squadron. We were our sort of own entity, and there was 12 of us as an escort multiple and sort of force protection, and we would travel around the whole country in 3 snatch Land Rovers with zero protection when you think they had an ECM bubble, which we never even probably knew worked, and an escort and warrior tanks. So we would escort armoured vehicles in a snatch Land Rover. And the staff, and I think the biggest thing from 2006, and maybe the old and bold listening will remember the Lynx helicopter that got shot down in 6th of May in 2006, and that was where a part of my PTSD sort of comes from, which didn't kick in to 9 years later. As we cleaned up the site, the helicopter site, and removing, 19, 20 years old, trying to figure out what body part belongs to which body, whilst being shot at, petrol bomb, bricks, mortars, coming in for 27 hours wasn't very nice.
No.
To be honest, but it was a job, and as I said back then, it didn't affect me at all. It wasn't until a lot later in life.
And I think that's the thing with PTSD and with mental health in general, is that you can go through something even right back into your early life, into your childhood, or something that happens years ago, like back in Iraq, and then there's a trigger point, or it just comes out that much later on. And we're going to touch on that a bit more sort of later, and how you've sort of dealt with that and what you've done. But it's difficult, I think, for anyone. You witness something on the side of the road, it's bad enough, but for you to be there, having to pick up the body parts of a down Lynx, whilst also having to deal with the stress of having incoming rounds, and obviously your own safety, your friends, your colleagues that are around you, and also knowing that you haven't really got any armour or protection to sort of assist. You've got an old Land Rover with a bit of steel around it, which you could probably shoot through with a spud gun.
Absolutely. And even our body armor at the time wasn't anything of what it is today. It was the whole stab vest with a sort of square over your heart, and
that little ceramic plate that was about as big as a as a teacup. So
from the Falklands.
yeah, you just hope that a sniper was going to shoot you right there, because otherwise you were done.
Yeah.
And,
well, actually, I think we actually got back to camp after that tour, and we put one on a range, and we shot it with a 5.56, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, like most of the kit we were given.
So it's improved a long way now. Yeah, it's like soldier of the future in our future now, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, sort of kit and what have you. Obviously, we can sort of talk about that for days gone by. It's amazing when you see the guys what they're getting today compared to what we had 10 years ago. It's chalk and cheese. We feel like Dad's army.
Oh, crazy. I mean, only 2015 when it seemed I had a bash at SFC selection, and it was all about you got to buy the Aku boots, because that's what everyone at Hereford and Poole had, those Aku boots, and you spent 180 quid on a pair of boots, but now they're issued, Yeah.
And so for anyone who's listening, the SFC selections, Special Forces communicator, and it's the guys that sort of do the comms for the guys at Hereford and at Poole doing the Special Forces, and SFCs have to go through a sort of selection process up in the hills in Brecon, which was probably quite good for you, given you're Northern Ireland and you like cold, challenging places. So Brecon's probably the perfect place for you to get your...
Absolutely. So by this point, I commissioned in 2012 into the Royal Army Medical Corps now, because the engineers wouldn't take me back due to I had no qualifications really.
Commissioned as an officer, yeah.
Yes, commissioned as an officer, yeah. So and I went on SFC course as a captain, and they had no idea. They were like, "Why are you coming on this course?" And it was the first person from outside, sort of in a sort of medical or engineer background, to go on the course. Like, "What are you doing, you idiot?" This is for same as I had to learn then. So I spent I did 5 weeks down at Poole with the SFC group there, and learning, which is where the Royal Marines sort of SFC go in, learning the sort of what an imbiter radio was, and
how to use a compass.
Basically, absolutely, yeah. And then with going over like mock officer week, etc. Because people who don't know it, the first 4 weeks for an officer, or the first 3 weeks even for a soldier, and the prep course is all the same as SAS and SBS. Except you do 3K an hour over the hills rather than 4K. And then the officer's week is the same. So you've just got to get amongst it and do that, which is notorious for failing. I think it's a 10% pass rate for officers of the course. So,
it's difficult. And I think a lot of people, when they talk about this 3K an hour, 4K an hour, they're like, "Oh, it's so much easier. You've got 3K an hour." It's like, well, you go out there and try and smash 3K an hour, and the reality is you're just pushing yourself all the time, and you're having to move at 4 or 5K an hour just to keep up with the timings. But it is nice to have that option in the bag, that if you do make a mistake, you've got a bit of time that you can make up.
Yeah, and even prior to even going on myself and doing some test runs when I was up there and getting up with a couple of guys that were going on the same joint selection with me, it was we were cutting around maybe at 5-6K an hour because we didn't have all our kit on, and we were in new routes. But when the weather comes in, you're full kit on. That's a bloody hard thing to hit,
Well, it is, but you have got £180 pair of boots on, so at least your feet are warm.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was on a winter course, so it didn't. I was wet before it started.
Yeah, people you speak to, they say, "Well, let's do the winter course," and then we get to have we when we go to the jungle, it's going to be so much easier on us. And I'm thinking, mate, just don't worry about the jungle just yet. Just get through the hills. And having done the winter and the summer course, I can tell anyone that's listening, do the summer course. It is so much better.
And that's a word for this. We used to lie on our billets at night and talk like, "Why are we on this course?" Because you have to come in, you start in the dark, you finish in the dark, and you have to come in, you have to worry about all your admin because you're soaked and it's wet through and you're muddy as hell. When you think, "Oh, could you imagine if we were on a winter course, we might have a bit of sweaty feet, rather than we'd have to be doing all this." And we used to lie on like, "Oh shit, no, what would you do if you won £1 million?" And there's the famous SF 8 miler up to the 4 mile point. There's that massive hill where it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back on a winter course. I'd imagine it was a bit more dried up on a summer course. But we were like, "What would you do with £1 million?" We're like, "I'd tarmac that fucker," to make it easier for everyone else. And great bunch of lads, great course. Everyone's there for the right reasons,
Absolutely.
And
And I think
good.
that obviously that again was another step in you pushing yourself, seeing how far you could take your body, and it's by no means an easy course. And so at this point, you're close to sort of thinking, right, I've had enough of that. Well, the military, your career was starting to come to an end, and you were sort of transitioning towards civilian life. Is that right? Because you got an injury.
Sort of, yeah. So basically, leading up to selection, which was 2015, and then I started a 2016 course, winter course. But obviously, that year prior was all my training and that. I was in Canada and in Battis in the training area out there, and there is basically where the armoured lot go, and you fight full battalion exercise. You do a live firing phase for anyone who doesn't know what it is, and live firing is real rounds, and there's a lot of field fires that started there. So on that live fire, when you're firing a tracer round, it can set the grass alight, and there's a lot of burning bushfires in essence out there. And unfortunately, one time I had a medical treatment at this team, and unfortunately, some girl fell into it. One of the permanent staff from the RLC fell into it, and as he was trying to beat the fire out, because there's people out there who know to do that.
Yep.
And she got brought into our treatment facility, and it was a proper full-on like Kazivac air in, and that was all my doing. I had to stop the whole 2,000 troops exercise, and as a young captain, and it was a big call, but we got her out and we saved her life. Just it got to her mum and dad had to get flown out from the UK to say goodbye to, because it was 50 chance of living, and it was turns out from there, that 2015, it was when PTSD was happening, and I didn't know, and it was that typical man up type thing.
Yeah.
But I was what the link was the smell of the burning flesh back to 2006, and that was the trigger point. To me was unknown, and I was come back to the UK and going and training for selection, but I was being I was imploding rather than exploding, but then I would get angry. I wasn't your typical army officer. I was fighting and road rage and trying to drag people out of their cars, and not me.
Early signs.
Yeah, which to me I just thought I didn't really know, to be honest. And it was actually a kid's birthday party with my wife, and that was probably 2016. Then I went and seen someone, because someone's like, "What's wrong with Darren?" And it wasn't myself, and then it got linked back to this into 2015. But that 2015 was a pretty grueling year, to be honest. And it was I'd come back, I was training to go on selection. I was coming up to Christmas break, sort of end of November, start of December. I had a weekend off, was in London with my wife, and not my wife at the time, she's my fiance at the time. And then I got a phone call to say my mum died at age 51. So it was a bit like shit. And her and my dad had split up at this point, so I was next to kin. I had to fly back, and I buried her on a Tuesday, and 2 weeks later I was getting married to my wife. So it was a pretty much thing. It was pretty hard, because the last conversation I had with her was I'm inviting her to my wedding because she had a drink problem, and that's the last sort of thing I said to her, and say to people now, just tell your mum and dad you love them, and if there's a problem, try and sort it. And I did try and sort it, but when someone's got an addiction, they've got an addiction, it's very, very hard, regardless of what that is. And then I went on selection, so I got married on the 21st of December, and then went on hills in the 3rd or 4th of January. And then it was on the hills phase when it was on my own. I had all this calming down to think about it, and it hit me, and I actually got taken off with that, and then that's where everything started to go downhill again. And then the diagnosis of PTSD and discharged from the military.
So did you find that there was much help for you, people to talk to? There was support there?
I think it's a process, but the process is good, but I don't think the process is for everyone. If that makes sense. It's there's an A to Z tick box of a list of things they've got to cover, and but it's a bit like I think with anything I sort of trying to explain. If you and I were to do the exact same physical training exercise 12-week program and eat the exact same stuff, we would have different outcomes because we're different people, and that's how I sort of try and tell people.
That's a good analogy.
And then once you get discharged from the military, it's you do 6 months treatment, and then bang, to this is our last session, Darren. We're going to sort of transfer you over to TILS, and that was shit. And and then I went to Help for Heroes, and they sort of took me under the wing and squared me away, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, great charity. Everyone's heard of them. They've done fantastic things, and obviously, in your case, they've obviously been a real inspiration in helping you. So, what's this sort of 2016, 17 at this point?
2017, yeah. So I was discharged in September 2017.
Okay, so then that's, I suppose, where the real story begins. Is what you woke up one night and thought, you know what, I'm going to do some crazy shit and just see if I'm Superman or not.
Nearly. So 2017 to 18 of being actually discharged, and actually you were just the military, you were just numbers. We joke about it being in, no, you're just a number, but you are actually just a number. I really struggled with the transition of the coming out and being a civilian. You know, I didn't know anything else. And working in London, and really I did that typical follow the officer route into the city, and it was shockingly bad. You know, I hated it, and unknown to me, all the crowds in London were trigger points for PTSD and stuff. But I didn't know what happened. I can seek more help through Help for Heroes. And 2018 was where I thought. My daughter was born 2017, Georgia, February. So that whole year was pretty shit, to be honest, and trying to bond with her and realizing that I didn't want to, and I didn't have this emotion. I felt quite emotionless, as you call it, and I worked that up over the next sort of 17, 18, and going through a discharge process. And you've got 2017 towards the back end, you have 3 crusty majors sitting there. My wife came, or even higher majors than that, saying, no, you're not fit enough, and you get discharged under the Invaliding Act. And I'm like, I've just left nearly the pinnacle of the military of SF to try and be that, to you telling me I'm not fit enough. Like, who are you? And it was quite a shocking sort of process, to be honest. And I cried in it, and then sort of from there, I just sort of became this emotionless, nothing, you know, glazed out. And 2018, I thought about pulling the pin, really, and looking at ways to do it. And I enjoyed the war fighting stuff, and I planned to sort of go out and become a mercenary and not hopefully come back. And growing up with no dad until I was that age when I was adopted, and I thought this wasn't an option because I've got a daughter and responsibility now, and I had to fix that. So yeah, and that's what stopped me.
I mean, that's crazy. So your daughter sort of saved your life, really. And you've got a great bond now. So this was 2017 she was born, and then September 2018 I had a second one born, but it was before that her coming was another daughter. But I knew then again, you know, I've got responsibilities now, and they can't grow up without a dad, and I've got to square my life away. And it was literally lying in bed one night with my missus and saying, right, I'm going to sort this out and change. And sort of, I actually read a book from David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, and it was like getting up early. And I'd already gone out to see Jocko Willink, another Navy SEAL, all about getting up early. And I just started to get up at 4:30 or even 3:30. I thought, if they're getting up at 4:30, I'm going to get up at 3:30. And you know, they're American, we're British, we do it better, you know. And then my background's 2018. I went to the Warrior Games, which is the Invictus Warrior Games, and set a couple of games records. Got trying to be selected for Team GB Paralympics and stuff from 1 and 200 meters. And I thought, I'm just going to try something different. And I thought, right, what's that? I googled the hardest event in the world, and it was the Yukon Arctic Ultra, 300 miles. And I'm like, bang, going to sign up for that within a few months. I was there. So what's the Yukon
Arctic Ultra? So
ultra marathon.
Yeah. So
okay.
It's a 300 mile. You can do a marathon. You can do 100 miles or 300 miles, and every other year there's a 430 miler, but it wasn't on earlier this year. And then away I went, and that's what I went out and did.
You trained for it, obviously. You did lots of long runs and ate well.
Well, so I booked it probably in October last year, 2019. I went in for major surgery, so I've had a partially replaced shoulder, left shoulder, through being serving, and I had a major across my back. I've got this like sort of 14 inch scar of where they did a nerve graft, where they take a nerve from the back and put it into the front. And I don't have this piece of the deltoid. And that was in November, and I was going out in January to the Arctic.
And you're pulling I'm assuming you're pulling like a polk or something, are you? You're on snowshoes?
Yeah, pulling a polk, exactly that. No snowshoes, it's up the Arctic River, so it's a bit, well, it's not flat, but it's, just normal. But pulling a polk, and I just went for it, and I just thought, I got to the 100 second checkpoint, 100k, and then I was second in the race, and everyone was like, "Who's this guy?" He's just picked up, and they were saying it's the first 20k has been the hardest it's been in years, and I actually thought it was all right, and
so who are you up against? These are like proper sort of like athletes or seasoned veterans who've done this challenge.
Yeah, exactly that, and people who like trained and who are like one of the guys who actually won it in the end. He was I can't remember where he's from, somewhere like Poland or somewhere those areas, but he was like their country. So when he was going back home, we had like 15,000 people waiting for him in Holland. Yeah. And then you got little old me tipping up, who's my training session was in January. I did a 40 miler in Brecon on my own. Just swore my kit and just stayed overnight. I did went to the Isle of Wight, ran 70 miles around it. I've got a YouTube video on that, which has been done to a mini documentary. And then I did the old military fitness test, 50 presses, 50 sit-ups, 1.5 mile run on the hour every hour for 24 hours for a bit of sleep deprivation, just to see what would happen. And that was it. That was the only training I did.
Wow. Yeah. Well prepared.
There, yeah.
So anyone that says they can't do it, they can't go out and get out of bed, get out your scratcher, go for a 5 mile run, listen to Darren, because he is proof that you can get up. If you've got the will, you can do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you finished the ultra, 300 miles.
So this is where it goes. So I got into the second checkpoint, 100 in, and I got pulled off through hypothermia, frostbite. So basically, in a nutshell, my shoulder injury that I shouldn't have went out with started to go wrong, horribly wrong, and I couldn't feel my left hand, and my whole arm was going numb. And I had a bit of discoloration in my finger. And 2 years prior to me being there was I think it was an Italian athlete who ended up getting hypothermia really bad and frostbite, and he actually had to get both hands and both feet removed.
Right.
Quadruple. So, but being the idiot he was, he tried to sue the race organizer. So now when you there were 6 checkpoints throughout, and when you get to checkpoints to do a hypothermia test, they do a frostbite test and making sure you're all right. If you get any sort of form of discoloration, because it's all about admin then, that they pull you off. And I couldn't really feel my left arm at all. And they tried to do because I was sitting second in the race at this point, they tried to do an enforced rest on me for like 4 hours. And I asked someone to help me unclip my pulse because I couldn't feel my hand. Yeah. And they overheard that, brought me back into a tent. It was actually a guy called Gavin, who was a Navy medic, but was volunteers at that thing. And he came in and had a chat with me. At this point, hypothermia was setting in because I couldn't warm up, and I was frostbitten and nose swollen. Just stage 1 here, so one that will go in the next 36 hours. And he had a word and said, "Look, Daz, mate, you got to go." And it was the other people were telling me it was like, "No, I'm fine." But when he came in and knowing the background of who he was and I was, I sort of listened to him, and I thank him, for it now, because the next part of the phase was no cover, and when storms hit, I probably would have. I couldn't put my shelter up.
Yeah, I mean,
so they pulled me off.
Heart wrenching to pull yourself off it, but the best decision.
Yeah, but getting Kazivaked out on a snowmobile, it was horrendous. It was so cold as well. And there's only 2 people finished it. They both got Kazivaked off the year before by helicopter. And so it seems to be a very expensive recce, really.
Yeah, it does. So what, you went out there on your own? You just sort of flew out? You get all the gear there?
I managed to land a couple of sponsorships here through kit, but again, not the best. So when I went out there, they were like, they do a kit check, and I just had a RAB jacket you buy in in one of the Cotswolds, which thinking it's amazing, top dog, and then all these people turn up, these big Canada Goose ones, that are really life saving, and then the race organizer do a kit check, and like, where's your heavy down? I'm like, this is it. Like, packs up into this size. And he's like, that is not a heavy down. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? And he's like, you have to buy one. It's like $1,000. I don't have it. So luckily someone was there supporting it and lent me it. So I had one, and it was a girl. So it wasn't the biggest, and it just about zipped up. So, but it was there to get me going.
It was probably pink, but being an officer, you probably weren't too fussed about that.
It doesn't matter, but because actually when I did put it on, it was so nice. So yeah,
that feeling when you're absolutely freezing, you're shattered, and you just get a decent bit of kit on. It's just nothing like it.
Well, it was the walking through the first night. So you come off a place and there's a car park called Overland Trail, and that's your sort of last safe moment, get out of jail free card. It's where if you pull off, they'll take you off for free. Because actually, when I got Kazibak dog, when I got back in the UK, I got a bill of €100 for my Kazibak. Anyway, and the race is $2,500. The enters are $2,000. So I was like, what was that one? But on that point, I pushed on through the night. I was walking with some Canadian bloke for a bit, and I was like, if I can push the night, it's sort of do the old military, move at night, no rest up in the day when there's a bit of sunshine. Yep. Although it's not the best, it was minus 50. And everyone was getting into their sort of scratcher at this Overland Trail, and I was like, there's no way they're going to get back up, because it was like minus 47 at this point. And they didn't. A lot of people scratched it there because of that. And it was the field the first night, and I plowed on through, but I went full into hallucination phase. I thought I'd seen a manatee, and I was having this conversation with a manatee, right? Going, all right, mate, we'll get you back to the water. And I'm thinking, how the fuck am I going to get this thing back there? And then when I got up close, it was just a little log with a bit of snow on it. But I was was looking at me and everything, and no, it was hallucination setting right in. And then you've got the big Yukon Arctic wolf, which is massive, and the moose as well, and it killed more people than anything else. And when you stop, and you see all these eyes beating down onto you, like, but it gave me that risk and that I wanted,
So that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think you're obviously clearly a person that strives for adventure, and you're quite happy to put yourself out of your comfort zone to see what you're capable of. And so you've done the ultra, you've come back, you thought, no, that's not enough. Got an injury, but I'm going to dust myself down. So then, is that when you come up with the mad challenge? No, you did a kayak, didn't know, a paddleboard.
Yeah, so I've done a few. So I came back from that, and then what did I do? I did a couple of things like lunge in a mile, burpee mile, that type of stuff. As you do, yeah. And then I did, this year it's where it's all gone on. So VE Day, so lockdown obviously happened VE Day. I did to mark 75 miles. I was going to do the whole up to Pegasus Bridge, the event that's organised that a lot of charities do.
Yep.
From the UK, but obviously that didn't go ahead. So I did 75 miles on a treadmill in a 12 by 12 military tent, pitch black, carrying 35 pounds to try and sort of simulate what was going on, with what they would carry back then, And so the first half of the year, I put all my charity money into Great Ormond Street Hospital.
Yep.
I raised just shy of £9,000 there. That's for them this year, and that was one of them. And then the other one was the paddleboard. Oh, sorry. From my house, I did a 52-mile tab carrying 54 pounds from my house to Fort Gilkicker. And then I put my kit in my Bergen. I've got pictures of it. It's quite cool, and pushed it. I thought about a river crossing, but I did a Solent crossing, and point to point it was only 1.5 miles, but it ended up being a 4-mile swim with the tide across to the Isle of Wight. Got out the other end, and then ran 70 miles around the Isle of Wight the other way from when I did it in January. So that was a 37.5-hour sort of operation. That was pretty brutal, to be honest.
At this point, people are probably thinking this guy will do anything out of like changing nappies or making dinner at home or something.
Yeah,
that's pretty extreme stuff. I mean, that's the sort of thing people train for. They put it all out over the internet. They want to get sponsorship for, but you've decided just to crack out a tab, swim across the Solent, run around the Isle of Wight. Back for tier medals or
exactly
on something
like
else.
That. And when I went the first time, we did a documentary of it, and it's quite cool. I'll send it over to you. When it was like the Isle of Wight radio station, like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, what's your strategy? And I'm like, I'm getting off the ferry, I'm running anti-clockwise and getting back on it. It's booked for 24 hours time, so I've got 24 hours to do it, and then I'm getting back on it and going back home. I'm like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And that's just how I plan all of them. And now I've built a team up of people supporting me, and that's where we're at, but they know that's how I now operate, and I don't really train much for it, and I just sort of suck it and see, as they suppose, which then led into the paddleboard 933 kilometres. So I paddleboarded east to west coast of Scotland through the Caledonian Canal. Never paddleboarded before. And then I cycled 790 kilometres on a borrowed bike, because I don't have a bike and I never really cycled on a road bike. And then I ran a marathon at the end. So
this is all in the space of what?
So this one was in August now. So we're into August. So I worked out actually the other day. Yeah, August to my last challenge last week. I've done 2,668 kilometres in 4 months.
That's unbelievable. I think you make obviously
stupid. That's what it is, mate.
No, I think it's fantastic. I think you've really got out. You've said, right, I'm going to do something, and you've gone out and done it. And a lot of people will talk about it. A lot of people will get 5 minutes into it and sack it off. You've seen it through, and that's really rewarding, I'm sure, for yourself and for your friends. And on a mental level, I suppose, have you seen that help you with the PTSD and with your mental health and your general character? Have you been doing all the 100%. Exercise?
Yeah, I mean, it's now why I do it. It's my sort of way of medicine, and it's my get up early training and doing all that stuff is now and focusing then on a goal. I'm a big believer, if you've got something to focus on, it takes your mind off other things. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still suffer with the dreams and things during the day and intrusive thoughts, but stuff now that I can almost control in a way, but not. I'm not cured from it, but it's just a focus. But and as you said, I just do it in close concession to each other. It was only 6 weeks after that event. I attempted 10 triathlon Ironman in 10 days in 10 locations, which has not been done in the UK before.
So tell us about this. So everyone's obviously heard of Ironman, or most people have. Not many people would have thought about doing one, and even less people have actually done an attempted one, or let alone finished one. So swimming, you start with a swim?
Yeah, so you swim 3.8 kilometers, open water generally, and then you get straight on a bike and do 180 kilometers, and then you run a marathon, 42 kilometers at the end. And that's it really. But up until doing it, so the sort of the 12 weeks, it was 11 weeks actually running up to that event, I thought, could I do an Ironman? Yeah, I could. All right, I'm going to give 10 a go. And that was the conversation I had with myself and around my mate, who's the filmmaker. It's like, mate, this is my idea. Which actually the documentary that's just been finished today. So I'm looking forward to that being released on Endurance Sport TV. I've picked that up and they're putting that out also. So that's going to be aired. But the YouTube link, when there's a couple of tiny bit of graphics need to go in now, but the documentary's finished. So I'll flick that across so you can share it with everyone.
Absolutely. No, we'll put that out there.
Over the next week or so, because it's all about perseverance in this one. So in that 11-week period, I had the thing in Scotland, the 933 kilometres coming up. So I had, in 5 weeks on, I did that. And during that there, I fell off a bike and cracked my rib. So then I couldn't train, because in 6 weeks later I was doing 10 Ironman, and I couldn't train really. And I couldn't swim front crawl. So I asked someone to help me. So I had three sessions of front crawl training, and then just got cracking really straight into it. But I now know why they do Ironman and triathlons in summer, because it was absolutely Baltic.
And so you didn't do these in the same place? You sort of moved every day to somewhere else?
Yeah, so I tried to do it in sort of iconic locations. I finished sort of and sort of a bit of my military career. So the first one we did from Fleet in my hometown, and it's because we had the house here, and the crew came here, and it was sort of everyone getting to know the routine. Then we went to Pirbright. I've never been to Pirbright, but it was because I did my training in Litchfield. But I went there because the opportunity was there. It was a phase 1 training establishment, and the RSM there helped me out quite a bit of getting me what we needed. When we stayed in all the messes generally when we went round. Then I went to Gibraltar Barracks 3 RSME, where I mentioned that I did the training earlier. And then it was over to Chatham, so the other side of the thing, so to 1 RSME. And that was day 4 when I got hypothermia really sort of bad. I was like, I didn't want to get back in the water. Because of that 11-week period and the weight I'd lost 10 kilograms total up until finishing it. The wetsuit that I had was too big, so it was ineffective. So as soon as I got in the water when it was 9 degrees, it just flushed through with cold water, and I had to just grizz it, really, or until the crew pulled me out. So I never actually completed the 10. The distance that I covered was just under 7, and it was 1,545 kilometers in that 10-day period. There was lots of factors that I probably want to blame. One was doing it in the middle of a pandemic, and like one of the lakes, for example, there was a body pulled out of it at the weekend before I was due there on the Tuesday, so it was shut. So I had to do it in the swimming pool, and there was only allowed a 45-minute session, so I couldn't swim that length, and so we had to cut down. So I just then turned it into 10 ultra sort of endurance triathlons, and covering anything from a full to over a half in all of them. So to cover nearly 7 distances. And then that finished, we did like the top of the Shard on a turbo trainer, which goes down as the highest endurance event in the top of in the UK. And then we actually finished in the London Eye. So we had one pod with a turbo trainer in it to cycle, and the other one with a treadmill in it, which again goes down as the longest event in the UK in the pod.
So you've done these 10 Ironmans, and at the same time you're smashing records and you're doing things that people haven't done before.
Yeah, and I sort of like that, because instead of looking at the blueprints, it's up to me to work out what the blueprints are and write them. And it's pretty cool, which then sort of leads on to the one that I've just done last Friday, which has not been done before, which was absolutely horrendous as well. And it's I'm waiting for it's not the records that I'm interested in. I'm just interested in seeing what happens if I push myself to drop in. And you'll see in the documentary when it comes out, I did collapse and stuff on day one of the Ironman. So it was just like, how do you then get up and keep going the next day and keep going and going, and that's what it's all about.
So what is it that I mean? Say a lot of people would, right? I'm going to do an Ironman. They collapse. They sort of they get to the end and they think that's it. I'm absolutely exhausted. I can't carry on. I'm out of here. You're exhausted. You're on your ass. Yeah, what is it inside you that helps you? What do you think about to get yourself back up the next morning to do it all again?
Some of it is a bit of an ego thing, I had people join me for certain parts of that, and one of them, and I'll mention his name because he can get creative for this afterwards. So John, he's actually going to see a knee specialist because he's wrecked his knee when he did a few of them at the end. Guys would text me the next day saying, I've never ran a marathon before. And this was one of the sort of pulling on points, was bringing people on to their own records as me as well. But I mean, really, I was doing it for the charity. And I sort of, when I'm struggling and I'm in my complete darkest moments and do not want to go on, I think of my kids. And I know I want to be proud. I want to be sort of to say, my dad did this, in years to come. And this is the I want to say newspaper cutout, but we're moving away from newspaper. This is the article that was on the Times, and this is him talking to Sky News or Good Morning Britain, and he's raised all this money. I've up to a total of nearly £25,000 this year between Great Ormond Street Hospital and Help for Heroes.
That's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, especially in the year of the pandemic when people really haven't been putting their hands in their pocket. That's a huge amount of money to have raised some great charities.
And it's just that there. I do literally one of the hardest things. I go back to the 75 mile on the treadmill, and there's an article written about this. I'll try and find it. It's in one of the magazines, social magazines. And at 51 miles, I was in bits. I thought my body was starting to shut down. I was pissing myself, shitting it, and shaking. I couldn't do like 300 meters on the treadmill without having to go to the toilet. It was that type of that. Yeah. And I sat down to myself and I thought, and my kids made me a little poster saying, "Go Daddy," and I looked at that, and then I thought the reasons why I'm doing this for kids in Great Ormond Street Hospital, it might not even wake up today when I finish this. And then it really sort of got me, and I'm moaning here about, I've got another 24 miles to go. I'm just going to, and that's, you've got to find that link. And because your mind will push you, your mind is a safety mechanism that will stop you from pushing yourself to die, but you've got to find out how to unlock that. Where when you use 40%, and if you can unlock that, there's so much more potential in all of us. And it's just finding that key.
I think you've definitely found that key. And so you've finished that challenge. You do the duathlon. So you just sort of touched on that. So that's what you just did last week. So was that you? It's a simulated sort of chamber or something you go into, which says that you're at about 12,000 feet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. So I finished the 10 triathlons. And then 4 weeks later, which is supposed to apparently give your body a month recovery for one Ironman, and there's me smashed like that, and I wasn't recovered. I went for a 5K run and I nearly couldn't walk the next day. About a week after, I was like, oh my goodness. And so then, but again, I put this out there. I said I'm going to do it, and this is one of the, again, not being done. So the Altitude Centre in London. I wore this. So at sea level, we breathe 21% oxygen. And I said I want to do a long distance triathlon. Again, never done one. And it was running, obviously, because it had to be indoors, treadmill, turbo trainer treadmill. So it was a 10-kilometer run on treadmill, followed by 150 kilometers on a bike, followed by a 30-kilometer run back on the treadmill. And this mask that I wore was ridiculously hard. It was like the oxygen mask you get when you're in hospital. And what that did was reduce the oxygen, because the only two ways to simulate the altitude is thin the air or reduce the oxygen. And this is what I did. So I'm in a chamber, a room, not very big. There's 3 treadmills in it and 3 or 4 bikes in it, so not big at all. And that sits at 9,000 feet. And then to take it up higher, you've got to wear this mask. So I took it up to 12,000 feet, which is just shy of 3 times the height of Ben Nevis. And did it, and it reduced my oxygen levels to just below 13%. So I was breathing less than half, or nearly half of what we were supposed to breathe. And boy, did I feel it. Yeah.
And you got to the end of that, you must have been exhausted.
Yeah, so it took me 11 and a half hours. So the run 40 kilometers total, which is or 100 laps of a running track, and it was basically like doing that because I was on a treadmill looking at a wall. There was nothing there. It was a more mental challenge there, and the bike obviously in the middle. But the first 10K, your saturated oxygen level should be about 98%, and I was hovering around 74, but I dropped to 62, which is ridiculously low. And when I took the mask off, they were like, "You're blue." I was all blue around here, so my extremities were going blue, and that's just lack of oxygen getting to the brain. And altitude sickness kicked in probably in the bike, and the world's biggest headache. And probably in a way to describe it is like the world's worst hangover with the world's worst being pissed combined as one, and it's just ridiculous. And because of the mask, I had to liquidize my food. So I used resilient training and resilient nutrition. They got pouches, so they put it into a shaker. Throughout the day, I drank 3 liters of milk with all these pouches of between 700 and 1,400 calories, just to get some stuff down it and drink, and then mask back on and go again. And yeah, it was pretty brutal, to be honest. And it was at the end of that, I've not felt as sick as that at the end of any of the events, because that Friday night I was going to try and come meet you guys, but I was ridiculously sick feeling.
I don't know why. I don't.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get home and try and force some solids into me, and then meet you on the Saturdays. I did.
Yeah, you did look a bit tired on the Saturday, so you might have an excuse now, actually.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I mean, the last 2 years has obviously been like a whirlwind. You've done all these fantastic, amazing challenges. You've raised some brilliant, sort of huge amounts of money for charity, and I'm sure you're going to continue to do it. So I think what everyone who's listening to this is going to want to know is, what have you got planned next? What do you need? Do you need sponsors? Do you need people to open doors? How can anyone who's listening to this help you? And what crazy exploits are you going to get up to next?
Yeah, so I think if anyone's listening away and wanting to help, it's more looking at leaving my full-time job. So, I mean, I'm currently working as a senior project manager. So I'm busy during the day. I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I'm doing my master's. I'm writing a book and then trying to fit all this in. So I actually want to leave my day job and do this full-time. So I'm looking sort of a full-time sort of financial sponsor would be the main thing, so I can get out and really sort of inspire across not just the UK but Europe and beyond, and try spread the sort of the mental health message, and you can do it. We as a country we're getting there, but we're not there. I don't believe the strategy right, and I'm only going to focus on veterans at the minute, but we're having nearly 100 people killing themselves veterans wise every year, and of course the system's not right, because we would have zero if the system was right. So there's people that slip through the net, and how do we approach that differently? And I don't know the answer to it, but I'm trying to work out and get the answer to it, so we don't have to hear these horror stories of someone just did it the other day that through a friend that I know. It was one of their mates, and it's just not right. And so how do we do it? And I think believing by getting it out and spreading the message more and doing these, probably another reason why I do the extreme events, to be like, bloody hell, what's he doing? Let's follow his story, and rather than saying, I'm just going to run 5K. Not that that's not a good achievement, but it is. Everyone's running things like that, whereas everyone's not doing everything that I would do. So it's the more extreme event, the more I think I get listened to.
Yeah.
So that would be it. And next year I've got a couple of I've got two main ones planned, and I can sort of go into the detail of one of them, which is Ben Parkinson, as you know.
Yep.
That's the UK's most injured veteran, and we're looking at, hopefully it's going to happen next year, but because of COVID it might have get pushed to 2022. And he's looking at doing an Ironman, and I'm going to assist him getting round one. And basically it will be, me towing him in a boat. And then you've seen the bikes, the double bikes. It's going to be 180k on one of them, which is going to be brutal. And then followed by the sort of pushing him around in one of these sort of running buggies to finish in a maxi sort of walk the last K and finish the line himself, And if no one knows Ben Parkinson, he's got 14 stone as a double amputee. So, it's going to be brutal.
Yes, I mean, Ben, I'll send him a link to this podcast when you get it. And Ben is an absolute machine. We've done a couple of challenges together. We cycled across New Zealand a couple of years ago, and then sort of did the old cockle shell paddle, sort of starting in the Bay of Biscay, and we sort of kayaked up to Bordeaux. And he is the true airborne warrior. And you're going to find this out, because he just doesn't give up. He's relentless. So one thing you're going to notice on these tandem bikes that you use, which I'd strongly recommend you check them before you use them, because they've got a tendency to fall apart, is when the guy on the front, like in Ben's case, because obviously that they haven't got any legs, they use the sort of the arm cranks, and they're sort of like pedaling with their arms, and you're on the back obviously pedaling with your feet, but it's a fixed system. So when they're pedaling, you're pedaling. So when you're trying to get a break going downhill, Ben just loves to beast it and wind it up, and he'll be properly sort of giving it big guns on the front, and your feet will be having to go with it. And but he's a strong guy, so I think he'll love that challenge.
Well, absolutely, and it's it happened years ago. A dad took one of their sons on it, but no one's ever done it as a veteran combined. And actually, we've got Endurance TV that's releasing my documentary supporting us on this, and it's the financial sponsor that we're after at the minute to make this happen, and looking at doing it in Kona. So Kona's the World Championships of Ironman. You've got to qualify to get in, but there's a thing called wild cards, and if you get the right sponsor behind you, go in as a wild card. And Ben and I were going to do that this year. Actually, we were going to do that in Dorney Lake, but they said no because the water was too cold, which is a fair one. But in Endurance TV jumped on and said, no, why try and bring the world to support the Pilgrim Bandits and Help for Heroes to you when we can bring you to the world? And it's really good. And over in America as well, with the veterans, they support it quite well.
Huge out there. Yeah.
So that's the idea. And hopefully, as I'm saying, it can be this year or 2021 rather than 2022. But that, and then another world first that's never been done, but I've got to sort of keep that one in the hush hush. Every time I sort of mention something, someone picks up the idea and has got more connection and goes and tries it.
That's the problem. Keep it to yourself until you get out there.
Yeah. Wait until this one's booked in. But financial sponsorship is one of the biggest things to make these things happen, and I really do believe it will save lives if we get the message out more.
And I think that's what we've got to do. I mean, you briefly touched then on Pilgrim Bandits, which is a charity that's sort of close to both our hearts, and a good friend of ours, Matt's the CEO there. And if there's anyone you need to sort of support you on one of your challenges, it's those guys. I mean, they don't know what limits are. I think that's not a word in their vocabulary. You put a challenge in front of them, they'll go ahead and do it. And so I think if you do anything with them, raise money for them, it's just so great. And they've got some good connections, I'm sure, that will help you. I think your mindset's the same.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, I've already spoken to Matt, and I'm looking at going to do stuff with you guys anyway next year, because I just want to, you know. And it's
But we might not want to run an ultra marathon, so
yeah,
we'll drive the vehicle.
I told you next year, yeah. 20, I think, next year, isn't it?
Yeah, well, some of us aren't as young as you. So,
yeah, I don't feel it at the minute. I'm just hobbling around like an old man.
Oh, it's not surprising, is it? I mean, I was watching that documentary. Was it Eddie Izzard? He went to, I think it was South Africa a few years ago for one of the children in need or something, where he ran a marathon a day for like 30 days off the month. It was something really crazy, you know, but still nowhere near what you've done. And I think he said his body just took so long to recover after that.
Yeah, it's that recovery. You know, saying I lost 10 kilograms, and during the 10 days, I lost 6 of those 10, and my body was burning 10,000 calories a day, and I was only intaking about 3 to 4 max, because you just don't want to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's how you're going to get your sponsorship. Just your USP can be, you know, the Darren 10,000 a day calorie diet, and but say, give me £100 and I'll tell you what you do. And so, you know.
Well, that's it. If anyone wants a beach bod in short succession, 2 weeks, and I'll do it for you.
Get that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I mean, it's been great to talk. You know, I've sort of kept you on for long enough. We were having a chat beforehand and having a bit of a laugh about a few things. I think the main thing to take away from this conversation is, you know, that you've sort of broken the mold. You've obviously struggled, and you still will continue to do so. It's not a stigma. You know, PTSD, mental health is something we've got to talk about. If you are struggling, you know, talk to someone, ideally a professional. You know, get help, but talk to your friends, talk to your families, and I think it's understanding and knowing the warning signs. And you know, if you're a loved one of someone you think struggling with mental health, you know, have a look. What are the warning signs? You know, is your other half? Is he changed? Is his behaviour changed? Is he becoming irrational? What things can people look out for that might be an indicator that there's something going on?
100%, and I even sort of put that into the business world. You know, it's about it's basics from knowing your team. So know your team who lives in the house with you, and knowing your team as in your oppos around you. And if you see any of that, change the atmospherics, as we say, you know, intervene, and don't be scared or afraid of intervening, because that intervening can save a life, you know.
Absolutely. And I think just don't be scared to speak up. You know, there is a sort of, it will be too late if you don't, you know, step in now. Like you said earlier on, you know, never be afraid to say I love you, never be afraid to sort of ask, how are you? Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we've got. You know, sometimes some of us can feel quite proud, but you've got to speak up. But not everyone's going to want to sort of speak up or go and run an ultra marathon. But I think when I was talking to a doctor a little while back, he said, if I could prescribe exercise, you know, give you a pill, he goes, it would help so many people. And I think obviously what you're doing on some level has really helped you with the exercise and the release of obviously all of those chemicals into your body. And I think, you know, next year is going to be fantastic. You're going to, you know, given on what you've achieved in the last 6 months, I think the next 12 months is going to be absolutely fantastic. Maybe not so fantastic if anyone decides to come on one of your runs with you. So I think I'll pass on that.
Absolutely. Well, I've been speaking to a couple of your guys about Everest next year. So
hang on,
see what happens.
That is definitely something we can all get involved with. So yeah. If my wife's listening to this, that's an invite, and I need to go and help. I can't say no.
Yeah. I think they need a podcaster there. Definitely. Absolutely,
get a podcaster. I could be a little Sherpa. I think I'll get my Bergen out of the loft, dust it down.
Yeah, you carry my kit, mate, if you want. Yeah.
No, I'm all right actually at the moment. I think I struggled to carry a pencil case, but it's been great sort of talking to you. You know, the podcast called Another Man's Shoes. I think we've just spent an hour in your shoes, and I imagine your trainers are probably quite smelly. But I mean, that's sort of the last thing I'll finish on. Recommendations. So 3 recommendations for the outdoor adventurer. What would all be your 3 must-haves that you take with you?
So only recently, so if you talk about long distance running, you know, I've tried a plethora of shoes out there, and Solomon Balance Sonic 3s are the best. I got them, put them on. I ran 2 marathons straight out of the box, and not even a hot spot. And I was like, gleaming, you know, and they were phenomenal. So I wore them during the last ones. So that's a must have. carrying kit has to be in an Osprey Bergen.
Absolutely.
It's just because it's Ali, and two, they're doing really some great stuff. I've got one called the Archeon, which is it's a recycled kit, like the stuff to make it, and that's the one that floated across the Solent, and I swam across, so it worked in that way. Yeah, proved. Yeah, test and proved. And probably the third one is a bit more of a sense of humor. You've got to have it when shit has hit the fan. You've got to have a sense of humor to get out of it. And the guys that work with me and the team is ultimately is what gets us around it at the end of the day as well.
That is. I think that is true. That sense of humour is what gets you all through it. When you're sitting around at night, you're wet, you're cold, and that bit of banter or just being able to laugh it off. Don't take life too seriously.
Absolutely. I know we talked about back in Iraq with mortars coming in every day, and it's funny towards the end. You laugh, and you put on your armored duvet cover, which is not an armored duvet cover for anyone listening who doesn't know what that means. It is literally a sleeping bag, and you get your head back down and laugh. So
when you zip up that sleeping bag, you feel like nothing can touch you.
Well, it's exactly that. Or if you're wearing your blue PTI jacket, you can't be touched.
Well, you can't. You are gods, clearly. Well, Darren, I really appreciate you coming on. It's an hour in your shoes, and it's been fantastic to listen to the journey, and I cannot wait to see what you're going to get up to next year. And we're definitely going to follow, and we're going to push the message, and we're going to try and get you some sponsorship, and really, really brilliant. Well done.
Yeah, cheers, buddy. Thanks for having me, mate.
Well, that was Darren Hardy, and this is Another Man's Shoes. Really enjoyed recording that with Darren. What an inspirational guy, truly motivated, and I wish I just had 1/10 of his motivation to get off the couch. I mean, he is smashing it. He's doing things that a lot of us can only dream of. If you want to follow him on his journey, then why don't you head over to Instagram? He is Darren_Hardy4, or go over to his Just Giving page. If you're able to donate anything, small or large, it is all appreciated, and he's got some fantastic charities that he's helping out. His page there is justgiving.com/fundraising/Darren-Hardy7. So through his page and through his Instagram, you'll be able to follow him and see where he's going next. Moving forward, you can obviously subscribe to this show. You can do so by getting notifications off Instagram if you follow us, and also why don't you head over to iTunes or Spotify or Amazon Music. We're on all of those servers, so you can subscribe to that so you'll get a notification the next time an episode goes live, which are each week. If you want to leave us a review, you can do that through some of those pages we've just mentioned, so please leave a review, good or bad. We'd like your feedback. Lastly, if there's anyone you want to hear on the show, then why don't you drop us a DM? We'll try and reach out to that person, or if you feel like you've got a story to tell, we'd love to hear from you. So why don't you drop me a line too? But for now, that is another episode of Another Man's Shoes, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.